Thank you very much, Regina. Thank you to DDL for the opportunity to present these thoughts on systems engineering. Welcome everyone to DDL. So I'm going to try and summarise systems engineering approaches within the next 7 minutes. Apologies, it'll be quite high level and quite quick. We'll talk about what we mean by systems engineering, what the core principles are, and then a quick run through some of the benefits of a systems engineering approach. These definitions come from NASA. I'm sure others are available, but basically systems engineering is defined as methodical, multidisciplinary, I think they're both very important, approach for the design, realization, technical management, operations, and retirement of a system, so thinking through the full life cycle. Systems engineering seeks a safe and balanced design in the face of opposing interests and multiple, sometimes conflicting constraints. We all know what they can be. And then think about a system. It's a construct or collection of different elements that together produce results not obtainable by the elements alone. I think sometimes when people describe systems or talk about systems, we think of big systems of radar plants or process plants, airliners, but actually a lot of the devices we work on from day to day can definitely be thought of as systems when we think about these definitions. A couple of things to bear in mind. Firstly, the system is not just the device, certainly at this basic level, it's the device and the user and the drug product, all of which need to work together. And also the device is not just the device, as well as the core device, its form factor, its features, its aesthetics. We also have everything around it. So we have the IFU, and we have the labeling, carton, accessories, and of course these days that extends beyond into apps and data storage systems. So if that's what we mean by systems engineering and how it can apply to us with drug delivery devices, what are the core principles that we can apply? I've come up with 11, so let's rattle through those. Firstly, we should be considering all elements of the system, and we should be defining system boundaries and interfaces, and that's both physical boundaries and interfaces and also functional ones. So one question is, how many subsystems do you end up with? How many do you need? I think the point is to be sensible, not create more than you need. So for this example here, you'd have the mask itself. There's a sensor unit there, some comms, a comm system between the product and the phone, and then the app as well. I think the other important thing is to really be clear on the extent of the system that you're developing, what you're responsible for, and also what happens beyond that. When we're specifying requirements, we need to base those on the needs of all of the stakeholders. So that's thinking about the user considerations. Who are they? What do they need? What about the technology itself, the drug product, the delivery device? What about manufacturing, assembly, filling? What are the commercial considerations for the business? And also, what are the considerations based on the therapy itself? Are they typical? Are any of them unusual? Is it new? Are you currently trying to meet an unmet need? Apologies for the heading on this. This should be saying structure your requirements by subsystem. You need to break them down into a multi-level hierarchy of requirements with traceability between those that you can then control and develop against. But a point just worth noting, well-established subsystems, so let's say PMDI cans, might require additional requirements depending on the application. So if you've got one in a simple handheld actuator, you have certain requirements. If they're part of a more complex breath-actuated inhaler, you might need to think of additional requirements that you need to capture and specify. Okay. Develop a robust system architecture at the start. This really is important. Before you start detailed design, before you start even detailed specifications, get your system architecture resolved and worked out. That reduces the risks of fundamental problems later on in development. You can challenge that system architecture in a number of ways using risk assessment, for example, before you then start the detailed design. Another way of challenging that system architecture is through use of modeling and simulation. We can kick this off quite early on to support early trade-off analyses and compromises. It can guide the development before test data is available. And once you have those models, of course, they can then support subsequent optimization and troubleshooting. Important to bear in mind, model at the appropriate level. It can be at quite a low level early on. I think there's a really good presentation there from Ben about initial modeling to really help guide understanding of a system. You have the model, but just bear in mind, also consider the big picture when taking decisions. Don't base everything on the models you developed. Think about other aspects as well. Okay, one of the real benefits of systems engineering is once you have those systems and subsystems defined, you can develop them in parallel. That means you can develop them with multiple teams and multiple streams across your organization and even across other organizations as well. It does mean that you maybe need to develop multiple test rigs and test environments to test those subsystems against, but in the long run, it really allows you to move quickly and efficiently. And you can actually consider different development methodologies, say waterfall, say agile, for the different subsystems that you're working on. Again, very important, they all are. Ensure that all disciplines are represented on each system element as appropriate. So that's talking about designers, human factors, electronic software, mechanical engineering, etc., and get a balanced approach. You should structure the teams by subsystem, not by discipline, not a team of engineers, a team of designers, etc. Have everyone involved working closely together on the systems that they're developing. Okay, we might not want change, but we need to expect it and manage it, and we need to manage it through robust requirements management tools and processes. Change can come from a number of areas, whether that's technical review, test results, human factor study, risk analysis, and when it does need to happen, it needs to ripple down, up and down through the requirements and through the design, and you need to have good understanding of the implications of those changes. Once you have your subsystems completed, you can verify them independently. Again, that's a big advantage of this approach. Iron out all the problems by subsystem, and then the final overall integration system and verification of that system should then run more smoothly. Okay, so they were the core principles. What are the benefits of such an approach? Okay, well, it engenders a balanced approach covering multiple perspectives. That's multiple perspectives in terms of requirements and users and considering all the stakeholders, and also multiple perspectives of the design team, and to make sure that we're really looking at the engineering, the design, etc. It facilitates concurrent engineering and efficient development of discrete subsystems, and it creates a good framework for communication and also for documentation of the development. Gives you a good basis for iteration towards a final optimum solution, and it can also inform and support subsequent lifecycle management and continuous improvement of the system you've developed. And last but by no means least, it really does help that nothing falls through the cracks. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Thanks again to everyone who helped with this paper. There's a summary of the principles, but I'm happy to try and take any questions now or pop along, maybe see us on the stand when you have a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for this very quick introduction into systems engineering. I liked your reference to the NASA. So is it true that inhaler development is rocket science?
Good question. In some cases it is, with some of the technologies around these days. You know, we can think of big problems and small problems. I think the importance of developing the system that's safe and robust applies whether it's taking you to the moon or delivering a drug to your lungs. So I might not be able to claim it's quite as complex, but it's good to think in those terms sometimes.
I think you clearly mentioned and pointed out the benefits of the systems engineering approach, but isn't there also a downside of it? Saying if you do this, if you divide it to all those systems, that you may miss the link in between developing those different subsystems?
Possibly. I think you could certainly run the risk of overcomplicating things. If you try and break everything down into smaller and smaller systems, you end up describing each individual, I don't know, component or element. I think you do need to be practical, and some of these principles definitely apply more so in some cases than others. If you don't have a complex system, don't have software and electronics, then perhaps the requirements management becomes more straightforward. I think the multidisciplinary approach and the really thinking about requirements and what you're developing and thinking about the system you're working in, how it fits into the broader, I think that does apply, and that doesn't complicate things. That just helps you get it right. But yeah, it needs to be applied realistically. We don't. I'm not overstressing the complexity of certainly the more straightforward devices, shall we say.
Okay, then thank you very much again.